favors, secrets, cover-ups, corruption. I've heard things that'll blow your mind, and now I think it's time you get the whole story. I'm Jesse Ventura, and this is Quinspiracy Theory.
If these past 7 days have taught us anything, it's that the Streisand effect is a very real thing. The harder you try to suppress information, to censor it and prohibit conversation relating to it, the further it's going to spread. In fact, you would have been better served had you ignored it or allowed people to speak their mind in the first place. Yet, for the past few days, we've seen multitudes of examples of suppression and trying to prohibit people from talking about this. We've seen biased narratives put forward on websites with headlines such as "The Anti-Feminist Internet Targets Depression Quest Game Creator Zoe Quinn," or "The Sexist Crusade to Destroy Game Developer Zoe Quinn." We've seen websites which are wholly dedicated to discussing gaming, to discussing the industry and all the events and information that surrounds it, having threads where private correspondences are mocked by the administrator, where dissenters are banned, and where conversation is closed after the groupthink is allowed. On Reddit, one of the larger subreddits which exist, r/gaming, had a thread with over 25,000 comments in it, thousands upon thousands of which were deleted outright by a moderator who had claimed to the user base that Zoe Quinn wasn't relevant, that the information wasn't important, that there's no conspiracy going on, that they just want to maintain order and decorum. And yet, that very same person is seen on Twitter having conversations with Zoe Quinn while deletions are happening. In fact, they happen to know people in the game journalism industry. They're talking to people like Patrick Klepek about getting together and having a cup of coffee and how great it is to be a moderator on Reddit. And when people decided to try to reach out and get something done about this, they were told by other people in positions of authority to fuck off. We've also seen examples of people who work in the game journalism industry and who are related to game development come forward and relate how Zoe Quinn and corruption in game journalism is a taboo subject, that it isn't allowed to be talked about, and that if you bring it up, your career is in jeopardy. Some examples of this would include this particular Tumblr blog by a game journalist who says, "I brought up this whole thing with coworkers at the site I work at, and they just dismissed the issue. When I pressed the issue, the implication quickly turned from a dismissive hand wave to a very threatening, talk about this anymore and you will be fired." Another similar example is found on the subreddit RPC Gaming, in which somebody posted a conversation they had had on Facebook, and the person responds to them stating, "Yep, also if you're ever interested in pursuing game development further, you really don't want to be a dick to Zoe, or any other game developer really. That's just not a good idea. If you decide to do that, do it on your own wall, seriously." And yet, despite these efforts to put forward a united front, to tell those that are interested in trying to look into this that there's nothing to see here, that it's a non-issue, there's no conspiracy, there's no corruption in game journalism or the development scene, the internet isn't buying any of it. In fact, it's created a bizarre, strange sort of alliance between websites which hate each other, whose user bases mock and deride each other on a daily basis, which have never agreed on anything except this one thing. When you see websites like Tumblr and Reddit, 4chan and GameFAQs, and even Funny Junk all saying with one voice, "We're not going to fuck off, we're not going to be mocked and told to go away, we are going to talk about this, there is something going on," despite their differences, despite the hatred those user bases have for one another, then that should tell you something about how bad game journalism and game development in the indie scene is. Now, ever since my first video went up 3 days ago, there's been a flood of new information in regards to Zoe Quinn, game journalists that she knows and has relationships with, different game developers, and the potential motivations behind those relationships. And one of the first things I wanted to touch on was a statement made by her ex-boyfriend Aaron about 2 days ago, in which he states, "Guys, you seriously don't want to go around making YouTube videos claiming the two names you uncensored are actually correct. First names are not sufficient to establish identity. At the very least, make it clear those two are speculation." Now, the two names he's referring to are Kyle Pulver and Brandon McCartan, two of the people that were listed as the 5 guys that Zoe Quinn had relationships with to help her career. Now, both Kyle and Brandon have both stated on Twitter that people are wrong, that they're not involved, that they have the wrong people, and that the information gathered is incorrect. And while Aaron's statement doesn't come out and outright say you have the wrong person, I'm going to lean on the side of what Kyle and Brandon are saying. I think that at this point, if it had been them, there wouldn't be any reason for Aaron not to just simply state, yes, it is them. And I do think the information that's out there that states that these are the two people, that the names have been uncovered and decensored and have been linked in various ways, are incorrect. And so what that means in relation to Zoe Quinn is there are still 5 guys, it's just that 3 of them are known. not 5. Now, outside of statements that Aaron's made in the last few days in regards to his relationship with Zoe Quinn and his thoughts on her relationships with different game journalists and people in the indie development scene, we finally got a response from Kotaku in regards to the allegations that Nathan Grayson, a writer at Kotaku, had a relationship with Zoe Quinn, a game developer. Now, Stephen Totilo first went to Twitter and then on to Kotaku itself to address this. Now, this is important for a few reasons, but I think the most important one is the fact that this is a third party who, through their conversation with Nathan Grayson himself, can establish that the ex-boyfriend's account of him and Zoe having a relationship is in fact true. Stephen states that Nathan did admit that both he and Zoe did have a relationship. So it takes an element of pure speculation out of the ex-boyfriend's account. If it was completely made up, if it was completely fabricated, Nathan Grayson would have no reason to go on record and state that this did happen. Now, Stephen in his release statement says on Kotaku, on March 31st, Nathan published his only Kotaku article he's written involving Zoe Quinn. He quoted blog posts written by Zoe and others. Shortly after that, in early April, Nathan and Zoe began a romantic relationship. I have no reason to believe any further action needs to be taken. Well, I'm so incredibly grateful, Stephen, that you think no other action needs to be taken. That these timetables seem to be so uninteresting to you. That the fact that Nathan Grayson hadn't told you beforehand that he's romantically involved with somebody he's written about, and that may cause a conflict of interest later on. That you had to confront him after this information came out. And that you think there's nothing else to really be looked at, and that Nathan really doesn't need to be, persecuted by you or others or us as the gaming public. Now, this entire thing started off with a sex scandal. That's what began this all. Zoe Quinn and the Five Guys. Zoe Quinn has alleged relationships with different people in the industry, and these people may or may not have helped her career out. And you and others have remained quite silent about that. Well, excuse me if that comes off as incredibly disingenuous. Excuse me if that comes off as seeming like you're covering your ass and you don't want to have to really look into things. Now, I want to start off by establishing the bias that Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun have when it comes to sex scandals. Now, many of you are probably familiar with somebody by the name of Max Temkin, the creator of Cards Against Humanity. Recently, a woman had posted on Facebook that Max Temkin raped her in college. Now, Max later went on to make a statement saying that he had not raped anyone, but that he understood she might have misinterpreted their relationship and is now seeing things that weren't there, or that maybe he acted in a way that made her uncomfortable, but he had not raped her. Now, Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun both ran articles about this. I'm going to show you some. Now, Patricia Hernandez had written one where she essentially said that Max Temkin shouldn't go and establish his innocence, that he should use rape allegations against him as a way to talk about rape victims. That makes sense. Somebody accuses you of rape, but you shouldn't deny it because that might hurt rape victims. Instead, you should stay silent on that and talk about how bad rape is. How insane is that? Even stranger still is John Walker's position on this. Now, in the original article that was released on July 15th on Rock Paper Shotgun, written by Robert Florence, these lines struck me as being interesting. Max Temkin, co-creator of the game, has been accused of rape. Temkin has addressed the accusation and asserted his innocence. The article then goes on to say, so it's weird not to talk about it, right? Why is no one talking about it? Follow on. Now, it's suspicious that they had no problem talking about this. And then John Walker, when the Zoe Quinn allegations start popping up, posts this. For the avoidance of doubt, anyone who posts on RPS anything about the private lives of anyone will be instantly banned. I am so horrified by the treatment of Zoe Quinn and the despicable hypocrisy of these foul bigots who pretend to care about ethics. Well, fuck you, John Walker. You want to talk about ethics? Let's talk about ethics. Zoe Quinn and Aaron had a relationship. Zoe Quinn, like Max Temkin, is a game developer. Max Temkin was accused of rape and denied the allegations. Both your website, Rock Paper Shotgun, and Kotaku decided to run articles about Max Temkin, but you both have remained silent about Zoe Quinn. I find that interesting because in the records that are provided by the ex-boyfriend, Zoe Quinn admits to raping him. This is a screenshot from the blog post, the Zoe post. Look at article number 4. I'm going to read this to you. I've highlighted the really important bit, but I'm going to read the entirety. Views on the ethics of infidelity, which she maintained is inherently wrong even if the person who was cheated on never finds out, because aside from willfully endangering their partner by the way of increased STD risk, if the unfaithful party then has sex with their partner, they are doing so under false pretenses, and therefore without their partner's consent. That is, sex with a partner who doesn't know you've cheated on them is sex without consent. Now follow that up with this. This is a conversation between Aaron and Zoe. Aaron, you lied so much, Zoe, and you made me feel so terrible about even entertaining the idea. You demanded that I don't trust logic and demanded that I blindly trust you, and you worried about me cheating on you, like I was the one at fault somehow. Zoe. No, I was worried because I didn't want to fucking lose you again. It wasn't about fault and it wasn't about you. I wanted to start over and I guess I never thought I'd ever cheat on anyone. And then you made me feel like legitimately anyone could. Like if I could, anyone could. Aaron. And your spiel about consent? Zoe. I still agree with that, and I fucked up. I hate myself for it. Aaron. And so you had sex with me without my consent. Zoe. I'm going to barf. So John Walker and Stephen Totillo will greenlight articles talking about Max Temkin denying rape allegations that are made against him because they think it's so interesting and so important when a developer of a video game is accused of rape. Yet when they are presented with evidence that Zoe Quinn willfully admits that she had sex without consent, that she raped someone, they don't think that's worth talking about. They don't think it's an ethical double standard? You don't think there's a journalistic question of fucking integrity? I want to remind you that Stephen Totillo has a fucking master's in journalism. Stephen, of anybody involved in this, what in the fuck? This goes to prove that there is an agenda-driven purpose behind editorial pieces that are put up on these websites. They have no problem doing this to a man, but they will not do it to a woman. A man is accused of rape and the man denies the allegation, they run the story. A woman admits to rape and they refuse to run the story. And you're telling me there aren't ethical questions involved. Now this isn't the first time, Stephen, is it, that this has happened on Kotaku? I want to play a clip for you. A clip that is available on Ben Kuchera's SoundCloud account. This is a clip from David Jaffe, the creator of God of War and Twisted Metal. Take a listen to this.
I feel terrible about saying it, but nowhere in that sentence do I say the only way you're going to get sex is underhanded trickery. That is your reporter bringing her own fucking agenda to the table, and you fucking know it.
This is her analysis, and she's going a little further than what you said.
And you know what? That's okay if you're writing about sort of benign shit, but when you're basically accusing someone of something really fucking awful.
The last is that a girl or woman couldn't actually win a co-op match on her own. Again, not literally what you said. This is how she's interpreting what you said.
And there are,
she's not the only person to have come up with these things, David. And she's putting this in context. Crude vulgarity that puts men in positions of manipulating women for sexual gain is misogyny.
Dude, okay. First of all, it's not misogyny. Misogyny is distrust or hatred of women. That is misogyny. That's what I'm saying. You don't get to just fucking make up your definition and where? Show me that.
So manipulating women for sexual gain, you don't think might possibly be related to hatred of women? You don't think that
Or what the fuck are you people? Are you a fucking therapist? Yes, any action that you do, you could travel it down a certain psychosis or psychological path to get to some conclusion. Absolutely. But to say that as a statement of fact and to bold it and to say this is misogyny, you out of your fucking mind, dude. That's Bush League and you fucking know it. And it's her second fucking week or her second day and you don't want to fucking call her out because you feel like it's a fucking bad hire. That's the truth.
She's not a bad hire. She's an excellent hire.
Well,
and not every story is going to make people happy. And some stories...
Dude, you know what? Give me a break. If you said Twisted Metal is shit, it's not relevant, it doesn't play well, that won't make me happy, but it's your opinion. You have a right. To not only call someone something awful like a misogynist or to imply that they're a misogynist very clearly, but to get the definition of misogyny wrong, and then on top of it to basically get your facts wrong. Where in there did I say the only way to get sex from a woman is to be underhanded and manipulate her? Where did I say that? Never.
She's talking about the tone of the interview and what you're saying in the act of promoting a game. Where do you want this to go, David?
I don't want to go anywhere. I want to go. I'm respecting you because you keep reading shit. I'm happy to be done. Trust me, I'll be done with you. I'll be done with your site. I mean, it's bullshit, dude. It's bullshit. It's Bush League. It's bullshit, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You're a fucking real journalist. I've always respected journalists. That's bullshit. You know, fuck Gawker, man. Fuck you guys. We're done. We're done. Don't fucking write about what the fuck you want, but we're done.
Okay, David.
Now, the article that David Jaffe is referring to was one that appeared on Kotaku on February 7, 2012, and was written by Kate Cox. I want to read some of this to you. Most trouble doesn't actually come from villains, and it doesn't come from people who actively stand around shouting, "I hate women." It comes from the thoughtlessness. By framing his statement as, let her win and she'll give you a blowjob, Jaffe said a few things he may or may not have meant to. The first is that only straight men could possibly develop an independent interest in playing his game. The second is that the best way for a man to get what he wants is to come up with some underhanded trickery to apply. Crude vulgarity that puts men in the position of manipulating women for sexual gain is misogyny. Why is it that it seems time and time again, when it is a male developer on your website, Steven, you have no problem allowing people to post editorial pieces and read more into it than may be there. Yet when a female developer openly admits through her own definition that she has committed the act of rape, you don't post anything about it. Because there's nothing more to this, is there? Hey, Nathan Grayson's a great guy, and Zoe Quinn's a great gal, and Kotaku doesn't need to talk about this. John Walker, you're going to sit and lecture me on fucking ethics after you ran the Temkin piece, but for some reason you're not going to talk about Zoe Quinn? So protect their identity when they're a woman, and throw them under a fucking bus when they're a man. Are you people for real? Steven, did you get your master's in journalism from the fucking University of the Twilight Zone? Because this is crazy town you're living in. So I just want to go over the standards. What are your standards exactly, Steven? Or John Walker, or any of the people at any of these video gaming websites? What the fuck do you adhere to? What are your ethics? Apparently to you people, having sex with writers is okay. That doesn't create a conflict of interest. As if somebody at fucking CNN or the Washington Post could cover politics, let's say, and have sex with a candidate. But oh, no, it's okay because after they wrote an article praising the product or the candidate, they started having the sex. So that's okay, even though it's a little weird, right? Because, that article came out on 3/31, but they didn't start having sex till 4/1. Because that day difference, that's a big deciding fucking factor. Like, people couldn't think, oh, maybe it's a little lie by degree. Maybe somebody wanted to cover their ass a little bit. I mean, shit. Just because Nathan Grayson and Zoe Quinn were in a bed together after GDC with a bunch of other people, there's nothing untoward about that. That doesn't say that they have a close friendship or sexual relationship. I'm sure Nathan Grayson decided he wasn't going to have a romantic relationship with Zoe Quinn until after he wrote that piece. That's fine in your mind. That doesn't matter. To all you people, you think friendships and sexual relationships, not a big deal. We're fucking game journalists. We don't have to have standards. Nobody fucking cares. Nobody looks at us like we have a real fucking career. Nice master's degree, right? Like, who gives a shit? We'll write whatever the fuck we want. We'll call ourselves a blog when we get people flinging shit at us, but when we want to get into a backroom conference or we want to interview somebody at Sony or get a demo kit or something sent over to us, then we're suddenly fucking journalists. Then we suddenly have integrity. Hell, at this rate, why not let our journalists financially support people too? Oh wait, you already do that, don't you, Steven? I mean, there's nothing wrong with Kirk Hamilton paying Zoe Quinn money. And especially since this was going on since fucking July. Hell, why limit it to Kotaku? What the fuck? Let's get other journalists involved. How about everybody pay Zoe Quinn money? I don't know. Philip Collar, you want to do it? Over at Polygon? All right. Oh, hey, there's Ben Kuchera. Say it to my face, Ben. Hey, glad to see you're donating too. This is all okay. We're going to give money to developers we write stories on. We're going to fuck developers we write stories on. This isn't an ethical quandary to you? Are you people insane? Do you live on planet fucking nuts? Like, what is going through your head to justify this shit? And the cartwheels that you all do to jump, like, I don't understand it. I don't believe that somebody can be this intellectually fucking dishonest. It is apparent in your articles that there is an agenda-driven bias. It is apparent that you people have a relationship with certain developers, and that when they're in the in-click, when you're all communicating on your social media together and exchanging phone numbers and having romantic liaisons and financially supporting each other, that you will protect them at any cost. Even if that means disregarding people coming to you with a news tip saying that particular person that you're friends with, you're fucking, and you're financially supporting may be doing something illicit or underhanded. Right? I mean, that is the argument I seem to be getting from your fucking camp. And all these other websites that are saying this is a non-issue. NeoGAF, it's a non-issue? To you, this is all okay, NeoGAF. This is all okay. Financial, sexual, doesn't matter. Game journalists are a fucking joke, right? Who cares? Let it be corrupt. What do we care? It's just video games. Aren't you upset about Ferguson? Why aren't you paying attention to Ferguson? That seems to be the big dodge right now. Anything to not look behind the fucking curtain, huh? At this point, it's fairly certain that none of you really care about keeping your house in order. I mean, is there anybody out there that might care about that? Well, I mean, maybe this guy. Maybe Maddie Lessem would care. I mean, he was one of the focal pieces of that article that Nathan Grayson did write about on March 31st of 2014, the indie game reality TV show that went to hell. You know, the one that sourced Zoe Quinn and Robin Arnott? Two people who, by the way, had a relationship as well. But not like that matters. I mean, sure, Robin Arnott was on the chair of the Indie Arcade Selection Committee, from what I understand. And Zoe Quinn does proudly display that she is the winner of that on her Steam page, on her product page, but I'm sure nothing's going on there. It's not like these people have pre-existing relationships. I mean, what exactly did happen to Maddie? Oh, that's right. He got fired. His career got fucked over. You know, all those articles talking about him, all the buzz about how he fucking sunk that show and how he was accused of all these terrible things, so he got fired for that. I mean, we have all these articles. There was one on IndieStock, how the most expensive game jam in history crashed and burned in a single day, from Jared Rosen. Again, March 31st, 2014. It's interesting, some of the things he says in that article, huh? Under the section Day Zero, where he talks about how Zoe Quinn and Robin Arnott described the incidents of Day Zero because he wasn't actually there. What is clear, however, is that the pair fought a fairly bitter battle over their contracts. And of course, later on he goes to say, and Zoe pulled me aside with Davey and Tom as she demanded Maddie's head on a stick. There's nothing untoward here. I mean, it's not like you could do a whois domain check and find out that Zoe set up rebelgamejam.com on the very date these articles ran, and that on this website for this game jam that has not happened and no information has been posted about, it states that Rebel Jam is currently being headed by Zoe Quinn, and that if you want to help out, please donate here. And where is here exactly? Well, it would be this particular PayPal account, the Quinspiracy. And whose PayPal account is that? I mean, is that the game jam? I mean, it's headed by Zoe, but obviously this must be a group endeavor, so whose PayPal is that? Oh, that would be Zoe's PayPal, the same PayPal she links to from Beesgo.biz, right there at the Tip Me portion. That's weird, isn't it? That somebody would have a game jam donating directly into their normal PayPal account where they take tips. How do you separate that money? How do you keep track of it? One could almost argue, looking at this, that Zoe is taking money for something that's never going to happen into her personal account and spending it, and not putting up any information to update anything on. So I wonder what Maddie would think of all this. I mean, from his perspective, he's looking at a person who wrote an article about him, Nathan Grayson, who's confirmed to have a relationship, at some point, a romantic or sexual relationship with a person he sourced in a story, Zoe Quinn. The other source in that very same story, Robin Arnott, also is alleged to have a sexual relationship with Zoe Quinn. On the very day these articles ran, talking about how badly he fucked up this game jam, Zoe Quinn establishes her own game jam with a PayPal that directly links into her own private account, where she takes money and doesn't post updates. That would look rather fucking suspicious, like perhaps there's collusion going on. Perhaps there are pre-existing relationships which are altering the truth of the event. Perhaps maybe some of the key players intentionally fucked up a $400,000 game jam for this sole outcome. Who knows? I mean, hell, he could think up a lot of things, like the phone number to his lawyer, and a good court to drag Gawker's ass into, since they're the parent company of Kotaku, who all these people are associated with in some weird, vague way. All these different journalists and developers, and they all seem to have these relationships, and don't mind putting out bad press about certain individuals, and apparently profiting from it. That would be my guess as to what Maddie would think in this particular situation. It's now been 7 days since the Zoe Post blog first went up online. In the time since then, numerous new allegations along with pieces of evidence have come forward showing different kinds of relationships that have existed between the gaming press and different developers. These relationships have run the gamut from close friendships to sexual and or romantic relationships to even financial support. There have been allegations that have been mounting that there's favoritism shown and that there's bias in the coverage. And yet, throughout it all, the gaming press refuses to address any of it, instead insisting to call the people that are interested in finding out the truth misogynistic or sexist or nutcases and idiots. If you want to demean those people that are looking at you right now with a critical lens, go right on ahead. But you are not going to be able to keep ignoring the mounting evidence that there is something seriously corrupt in your particular industry. If you want to wear the moniker of journalist, you'd better start fucking acting like a journalist. It's well and high and mighty to say that you have ethics and standards, but if you don't put those into practice and actually walk the fucking talk, they mean zero. And with every single blog post that you write saying you won't negotiate with terrorists, as if labeling us like that is somehow going to make us go away, you just prove that you don't know what you're up against. So let me remind you.
What are you?
of Gotham's reckoning, here to end the borrowed time you've all been living on.
Pure evil.
I'm necessary evil.
No,